Did you mention me breaking my feet or something? Yeah, during climbing.
I
So
did,
let's
because
go
that's
into
why you
that
stopped climbing.
smooth transition into Mitch Drew, who just got an art episode as well. People go in streaks on our Patreon of some people being really active for a little while, and so then they get mentioned in a bunch of episodes. It's a good strat. Highly recommended.
Mm-hmm.
He says, when recovering from your injuries and strategies, it says
Strategies.
surgeries. It says surgeries.
Actually, we do sometimes recover from our strategies.
When recovering from our injuries and surgeries, as discussed in oh my God, I am the second worst reader in the world. There, I just zoomed in so I can see it better. When recovering from your injuries and surgeries, he's talking to me, as discussed in the My Big Break episode. How did you cope with the more difficult moments where it didn't feel like you were ever going to get better and you were missing out on so much? What sort of things did you tell yourself and do to get out of that mindset and focus on your progress? I'm currently 6 weeks into recovering from leg surgery after a bad ski injury, so I'm at the point where I feel like I should be capable of much more than I am right now, even though I know it's a process. So, first of all, when they tell you things like, oh, it's going to take 4 to 8 weeks to recover or whatever, so you're like, 6 weeks, I should be recovered, I would take it real easy with that. I mean, I had more complications because I got a bone infection and things, so mine was like smashed, and feet are weird to do surgeries on, and plus bone infection, second surgery, blah, blah, blah. So it lasted much longer than it should have. But I remember early on of just like, but I have gigs coming up. Like it'll recover. And the doctor being like, saying it was going to, I remember their reaction when I was like, how long before and they'd be like, ooh. I'd be like, oh, come on. And then it's funny that we're such social animals, and there's this sense of fairness that we have because most of our lives are so social that fairness and understanding what's fair is so built into our morality and sense of justice and things like that, that we then apply fairness to like viruses or bones or like diseases or like whatever things that fairness has nothing to do with anything, but your brain is just equipped to think that it does. And so I just remember being like, that doesn't seem, for me, it'll probably be on the short side. That seems like I recover from things fast and I'm tough or whatever else, or young or whatever. I have a high tolerance for pain. And boy, was I wrong. It lasted
2 years, right?
So much longer.
Or no, 1 year.
Well, so then the worst part was it was 1 year on crutches. And then I got to start using a cane again. And that was when things got really, because before that, it was almost like when I was really laid up, the first couple months, it was the least depressed that I was. Just even before that, it was depressing to get injured, but then I was not depressed because there was just nothing I could do but lay around and rest and just work on other stuff. So it also gave my brain to be like, usually my brain's like, what's like depression and anxiety are things that will just pop up in your head to be like, hey, is there anything that we should be depressed or anxious about? We're just going to run this emotion through the system to see if it picks up on anything in the environment that we need to be aware of. Yeah. And then when you don't see the thing and you're like, what am I depressed about? Well, when you have 2 broken feet, your brain goes, this is what you're depressed about. You're depressed about 2 broken feet right now. I'm like, oh, okay. That's what and there's something like relieving about that.
Oh yeah. The title of the Bertrand Russell book, Conquest of Happiness, talks about unhappiness with no seemingly, physical cause is all the more unbearable because it seems inescapable. If there's no thing you can focus on, that's why it's like, oh shit, it's so abstract that I have no chance against this thing.
Exactly. And then it got rough, the second surgery and everything. But then when I remember being excited the first time I rode a bicycle, because I knew I could do that before walking because there's less pressure and everything. And then I like got on a cane for a while, and then I was on a cane for like a month. And then I had the thought that this is what my foot's going to be like for the rest of my life. And it's just never going to get better from here. And that was absolutely miserable. Because before that, it was just, everything was just going to keep on getting better. You break your feet and then you're at the bottom. And then just every day is getting better. You're in less pain, you're healing. Like every day is getting better from there.
Gains every day.
Yeah.
Guaranteed gains.
Yeah. And then once the gains stopped showing up, I was like, oh no. And that was brutal. And then today, many years later, it's just not that big a deal. It still bothers me some. I would say it keeps me from doing some of the things. There certainly becomes an excuse of like, I almost joined CrossFit.
You can never river dance, right?
Yeah, the river dancing was the hardest thing for me to let go of. Because it was like the day I was going to start river dancing classes was the same day I broke my feet. Yeah, so there's things that have never been the same, but it's also been on those days I'm just like, oh, this is what it's like to be 80, but everywhere. Like how my foot feels right now, that's just what my body will feel like one day. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you can still work with it and stuff, and you got your mind and everything. It's just limiting in certain ways. And then I have weeks where I never notice it. And I'm sure with just a leg surgery, probably you're going to have 100% recovery. A leg isn't as complicated as a foot or like a hand.
We talk about looking at things, going day by day, but even day by day, don't count on it working every day.
No.
Like give healing a day off too.
Yeah.
Like if you healed for 7 days straight and then on the 8th day you're stagnating, that's okay. The healing needs to take some time. Sometimes the loading screen is stuck at 70%. But it doesn't mean it's frozen. Sometimes it'll jump to 71 in a little bit.
So when you say I'm at the point where I feel like I should be capable of much more, I would say if you can do yourself a favor and just be like, this is it, this is as good as it's gonna get, then you're going to like just eat all of that disappointment now. Get that disappointment over with, and then whatever bits of like recovering happens is just going to be a bonus. And then if you do make 100% recovery, you'll get to be like, holy fuck, awesome. I told myself that I was never going to be the same. And then you're going to be that much more grateful for that. That's what I would go back in time and tell myself. That was because that was the hardest part, was that moment, like a month into using a cane, because I used a cane for like a year at least, and month into using a cane,
it blended in.
Yeah. Cane's not
I like
a bad
started
book.
to not even notice it when you had it.
Yeah.
No, it gives you some swagger.
Yeah.
And you've got a weapon on hand, and there's always something to do with it. Like you can lean on it, you can spin it around. When you're just standing there with nothing in your hands, what do your hands do?
Yeah.
Put them in your pockets? No. Fidget with them? No. Leave them just by your sides? No. There's nothing to do with them.
Yeah. So get a dope ass custom cane. Spend some time, look for like wood canes. You're probably going to want a couple of them because one of them might break. After you search for it, don't be surprised if custom cane ads show up in your Facebook feed for some time afterwards. Long after you've recovered. Get a dope ass cane because it might be around if you have a bad day, and then you can have a cool looking thing that you're used to. I thought recently, I was like, you know what, I should get an awesome cane again because I had one and then it broke. And then
how did it break?
It was like in a car and something smashed against it. Like when I was moving, it had like a bunch of stuff piled on top of it accidentally. Yeah.
Not just walking across the street.
But I got like a double helix spinning thing, like all custom this and that. And I was thinking I should get that by the Campout, by the time the Campout comes around, because I know I'm going to be walking around like the whole weekend, and
you can be like the Jurassic Park guy.
Much on my
like the
foot. Big
door opens and then he like slowly walks out.
Oh, and I have another slowly walks.
Welcome to Jurassic Park. Is that what he sounds like? Sure, it is now. So. That's my new character, old guy from Jurassic Park, the character.
I was trying to remember the scene, and then it started to click in. Like, oh, that's a good reference. I would also say maybe depending on where you're at, try hiking. So rather than something like a treadmill or being on a street where your leg or foot or whatever is doing the exact same movement over and over and over and over again, that can be a little bit much for recovering. Whereas hiking seems harder, but because of the variation and all the different angles and everything else, it will, even though it might feel harder at the time, really good way to tune up all those like fine muscles and everything else. And even if it's more sore.
That's good advice.
That's real good advice. Yeah, I highly, highly recommend that.